One second. Let me go back to the Zoom. Okay, we're live.
Live? Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Malvika. I have with me Shanotra Kumar. Today, from Teen Nyaya, we're going to talk about torture in police custody and police brutality in general. It's a pretty trending topic these days. I'm sure you've all been following the death of George Floyd in US and also the story of Jairaj in Phoenix from Tamil Nadu. I mean, the father-son duo who were assaulted by in police custody, basically. So, a conversation around this topic is very essential so that you really understand what rights you have, or if you know someone else who's going through something like this, it's best to understand what rights you have under the law. Now, India does not have a separate law on torture. It has signed the UN Convention Against and other cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment, but it has not actually ratified it into the domestic law. So currently, there was actually an attempt to bring this convention forward in form of a law in India, which was known as the Prevention of Torture Bill 2010. But this bill also lapsed because the parliament had dissolved at that time. The National Human Rights Commission basically put out a report known as the National Campaign Against Torture, where they actually state the number of people who've been subject to torture in India. And there have been a total of 1,791 people, as per government data, that has died in custody in India, basically, during police custody. Now, in international law, torture is prohibited as per the UDHR, commonly known as the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and the ICCPR, which is another international convention which many countries follow. But in India, especially, if you look at how torture's been addressed, even though the term torture is not really there in the constitution or any other penal laws, meaning the Indian penal laws, uh, Article 21 of the Constitution clearly provides that no person will be deprived of their life or liberty except in procedure according to law. So, life or liberty here also includes your right to live with human dignity, and also includes a certain personal guarantee against torture, cruel, or any sort of treatment or punishment. Now, you definitely have a right to go to high courts or supreme courts under Article 32 and 226 of the Constitution, but Article 22 of the Constitution in India also guarantees this protection to all citizens against arrest and detention, so that they are not detained and put in custody without being informed of the grounds. And they also have a, like, people basically also have a right to consult and defend themselves by hiring a legal practitioner or a lawyer. Shanotra will tell you more about the rights while being arrested. But alternatively, when we look at torture, there are some Indian Penal Code provisions and some CRPC provisions that come into play. Let me go through some of the common Indian Penal Code provisions that you can file an FIR with. So, if you want to file an FIR, you can definitely file it under these sections. So, Section 321 of the IPC talks about a situation where someone causes hurt to someone else or is likely to cause hurt. So, this in a way is being considered to be come under the ambit of torture. 322, Section 322 talks about voluntarily causing hurt or grievous hurt. Now, grievous hurt has a higher degree of um, uh, basically pain or infliction of pain involved. Let me give some examples as per the law. Like, for example, emasculation, where you remove private organs, uh, blinding someone, removing someone's teeth, breaking someone's bones. These are all concepts that fall under the law as grievous hurt. So, hurting someone in a grievous manner, so grievous hurt is also punishable under the law. Now, Section 324 of the IPC talks about situations where people are punished if they hurt someone using an instrument for shooting, stabbing, cutting, or they use an instrument which is likely to cause any death or cause fire or has gives out any sort of corrosive substance, or if someone uses any explosive substance against you. Now, using all these sort of items are punished under the law, and under the Indian Penal Code, you will be punished with 3 years jail time or a fine or both. Similarly, under section 326 also, if you use any of the items I had just mentioned, and you cause grievous hurt, which is what I explained before, where you really hurt someone by breaking their bones, or you cause a higher degree of pain, then the punishment time is also higher. It may extend to 10 years with a fine or both. Now, there's one more very important section, which is section 330 of the IPC, which says that no one can cause hurt to another person just to extort any information, any just to or for the purpose of basically constraining that person in any way, or to actually blackmail them or take any valuable securities from them. So getting a confession out of someone by beating them up is not allowed under the law, and you can use section 330 of the IPC in such situations where you're facing torture by the police. But this is a very tricky situation, and most importantly, you need to know what your rights are while being arrested so that such situations don't occur in the first place. So Shanotra will explain the same.
So basically, if you are arrested or about to be arrested or even know someone being arrested, the primary thing for you to know or to keep in mind is that you don't lose your basic civil rights upon like arrest. There is a manner in which the police like have to treat you with dignity and follow certain procedures to ensure that you are not subjected to any kind of violence in their custody. Now, there are also like certain legal safeguards that you need to be aware of in case you are arrested. Things that you can ask or demand for in such situations. Now, I know that though at these times, like when the police is coming to arrest you, it can be a very intimidating experience, but try to remember these safeguards that I'm going to tell you. These are your rights in such times. Firstly, the thing is, when the police is coming to arrest you, they must identify themselves and bear accurate, visible and clear identifications like name tags on and their designations on their uniform. If they don't have such identification, you can always ask them to identify themselves. This is very basic because you don't know if someone is impersonating a police officer and arresting you. You need to know that a person arresting you is a police official. Then the next is basically that the police must afford you an opportunity to call your lawyer. Now, it's also possible that you can't afford a lawyer or you don't have one. When you're brought before a magistrate, you can always ask the court to appoint you a lawyer from the State Legal Service Authority. Then the next one is that the police must, while you're being arrested, the police must also allow you to contact your friend and family member, either one of them, just to inform that the arrest is taking place. This is again to ensure that it's not like one of those cases where you're just taken away without informing anyone, and then like you land up either being disappeared or you hear of these, like in Bollywood movies, you hear of these, like it's commonly referred to as encounter killings where people are just taken away. It's not as dramatic as it happens, but you are allowed to like tell a family member when your family member or a friend or a close relative when you're being arrested. Now, another thing is that when the police come to arrest you, they must give you the reasons for why they're arresting you. They just can't come to your door, pick you up, and like without giving any justification, just take you to police custody. Now, in some cases, they might have an arrest warrant, but this is only for non-cognizable offenses where they require a warrant from a judge to come and arrest you. In other cases, they're allowed to arrest you without a warrant in cognizable offenses, but in such cases, they have to clearly tell you that, okay, this is the offense that this is the crime that was reported. This is like, why we are arresting you. This is what the information we have on like that is justifying our arrest. This must be communicated to you at the time of the arrest, and it's very important. If you don't, you can at later stage take action against the police officer, because this is one of the primal rights, right? You need to know of the reasons of your arrest. Now, next is that when you are arrested, the police are required to make a document called the memo of arrest. Now, all the details regarding the time of your arrest, where you were arrested, like the place of your arrest, are put in this memo by the police. You will be required to sign it. So make sure that you read it properly before you sign it, and always insist on getting a copy for yourself also. Make sure that they are writing down accurately as to how you were arrested and under what circumstances, because plays a very crucial role in the trial that has to follow for whatever crime that you are being arrested for. Then the next is that if you're eligible for bail, they must inform you of the requirements for bail, and if not, you can always ask them to connect you to a lawyer to ask, like, apply for a bail. Bail is something that's considered as a norm in India. So basically, there's a saying that says bail is the norm and arrest is the exception, like the custody is the exception. That is generally followed. So fear not, like if you have been arrested in the moment, there are very high chances of you getting bail. Now, the next is that as soon as you've been arrested, the police must inform the nearest police control room and provide them the reasons of your arrest. This is mainly one of the first immediate steps that are taken after they pick you up to ensure that the arrest is recorded and it's on the books. Again, as I said, it's not one of those cases of, like, to ensure that it doesn't become a custodial disappearance or a custodial, like, death later reported as a custodial death. So they have to inform the police control room, just ensure that you're doing it. Now, also, as I said before, it's really hard to ensure that these steps be followed, because the whole exchange turns out to be so intimidating that you are being arrested, and police is generally seen as an arm of the government that most people fear from. But as far as possible, try keeping these points in mind. Try ensuring that they are followed, or getting your lawyer to ensure that they're followed, or a friend or a family member can insist this for you. Now, the last thing, no, actually, two more things. The one more thing that you need to know of, that police must produce you before a magistrate within 24 hours of your arrest being made. The reason this is really important is not only to avoid any delays or unfair detention, but also it's for the magistrate to ensure that you are not subjected to any violence while in police custody. Then the final and the most important procedural safeguard that's there in place is that you have the right, once you are in police custody, you have the right to undergo a medical examination. Now, this examination is generally done by a trained doctor, that's generally either a civil doctor or someone in a government hospital, where they will examine you for any major or minor injuries on your body. And once you are arrested, and this has to be done every 48 hours if you continue to remain in their custody. This physical examination has to be recorded in the inspection memo and signed by the police officer. Now, in case there are any changes in the gravity of injuries on you, this can be used as evidence for police brutality committed on you when you want to take action in the future. Now, all of these safeguards are for before and while you are being arrested. Malvika will walk you over what actually can you do if custodial violence has already occurred by the police, and what are the recourses available to you in cases of such custodial violence.
Yeah, so when we look at recourses available for custodial violence, let me just take an example. If this was not a policeman who was, for example, torturing someone, then if it was like someone who was not a policeman, then you would definitely file an FIR for such a situation and you would complain to the police. So in situations where it is actually the police officers doing this to you, it may get a little tricky to go back to the police station, but that itself is one of your recourses, because even though it may be difficult to file an FIR against a police officer at the police station, the police cannot refuse to file an FIR. They have a duty to file an FIR against any crime that happens. So if they refuse to file your FIR, then you can write a letter to the senior inspector or station house officer of the police station. You can get a lawyer on board to help you file it. Someone on your behalf can file it. There are many steps you can take, but filing an FIR against the person who's hurt you is your right. And the police, no matter where you go, have a right to, has to definitely file the FIR for you. You can also make a private complaint with the magistrate. So you can definitely take the help of a lawyer here. It is very necessary because court procedures are involved. You can then file an application with the judge and file a case against such a police officer. The judge will definitely take a look at this and may even suspend the police officer or take action against him. The point is that you have an option to go to a magistrate and actually file a private complaint. You can also file a complaint with the national or state human rights commissions. Now, the Human Rights Commission basically look into human rights violations in India. They protect a lot of human rights, including women, children, etc. And one of their areas is torture. And specifically, they have an inquiry and complaint system. All the details are given on our website if you want to see, where you can definitely call them up, email them, or file an online complaint about the incident that you faced. And you need not file this to the National Commission. You can also do this in your own state to the State Human Rights Commission. Every state has one, so that's also an option that you have. Now that you know the recourses you can take if you or someone that you know is placed in a particular situation like this, let's look at what happens in cases of custodial death, disappearance, and custodial rapes. Shanotra will take you through it.
So, as Malvika said, it can be very difficult to initiate an FIR against a police officer, right? Because there's always that worry that there'll be an unbiased investigation by the police against the police, and we all know how that may turn out. So, for this specifically, there are certain procedural safeguards in place. Now, if a person has died or disappeared after being taken into police custody, or if a woman has been raped in police custody, the law requires the judicial magistrate to conduct a parallel inquiry apart from the one that's already being conducted by the police. Now, this parallel magistrate inquiry is considered to be a very important step, as it acts as a fail-safe in case if anyone tries to tamper with the evidence or intimidate any witnesses from giving their statements. Now, if you specifically see in cases of death of a person in police custody, the magistrate must have the body sent for postmortem within 24 hours of their death. Now, this is a mandatory step, and if this is not done, the judicial magistrate has to note down his reasons for not doing the same in the case files. And it's, as I said, it's legally mandatory for them to follow this. Now, the National Human Rights Commission has also provided a set of guidelines to be followed to ensure proper compliances for this parallel inquiry. Now, these guidelines basically are a set of instructions such as for the inquiry to be done in a quick and a fast manner so that there aren't any delays. It also has processes for taking witness statements, inquiries into the possible motive of the custodial death or encounter, as I initially called it, and also it also provides for a public notice to be issued saying that this magisterial inquiry is happening, and interviewing families of the deceased and so on. So this inquiry is actually very similar to that of a regular criminal investigation, but since this is being done by a judicial magistrate, the findings hold greater weight if and when the responsible policemen are prosecuted. Now, similar inquiries are also conducted in cases of custodial disappearances. That is when a person who is taken into police custody, but then the police claims that they might have disappeared, and also in cases of custodial rape of women. So when we talk of custodial rape, most people by I mean law students who actually study this in IPC, or lawyers may recall the famous case of it's called the Mathura rape case from 1974 in Maharashtra. It was around the time when a few more cases of sexual violence against women in custody came about, and this created a very big uproar calling for stricter punishments for those police officials committing custodial rape. Now, it led to a whole big movement with campaigns demanding for legal reforms in this area of law. Now, if you see, many of these demands from these campaigns can be found in our criminal law right now. That's basically the most important provision being in section 376 of the Indian Penal Code, where the rape by a police official is termed as an aggravated rape, and it carries a stricter punishment than the punishment for the regular offense of rape. I mean, nothing about rape is regular, sorry, but it's just the offense that if in case if a person, if a rape is committed by a person in a position of authority like a police officer, it's termed as aggravated rape, and the punishment for it is minimum 10 years of jail time, and it can go up to life imprisonment, and it also carries a hefty fine. Now, though even with strict punishment, at times police officials misuse their state afforded authority and exploit the position and power given to them. Now, in such cases, it's important for you to know your rights and these legal safeguards in place to protect yourself from such officials. For women specifically, there's another thing that you really need, like an important thing that you need to know is that you cannot be arrested between sunset and sunrise or between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. Now, this safeguard is in place to ensure that you aren't subjected to any custodial violence, be it sexual or otherwise. If a police officer is coming to arrest you, please ask them to show your warrant, because night arrests are generally is seen in are done in very exceptional cases, and that too only if they have express permission of a judge. So if in such cases also, if they do get express permission to arrest you at a night between sunset and sunrise, it can only be done by a woman police official. So if there's no woman police official to make the arrest, you can actually refuse the arrest and ask them to come in the day with a woman police official. So as you can see, the law has somewhat accommodated these safeguards over the years to prevent custodial violence, but we keep hearing of cases almost frequently, the most recent one being that of Jairaj in Phoenix. Now, there are many nonprofits and civil society organizations working in providing sensitivity training to police officials, and at the same time also advocating for legal reforms for for basically providing better remedies to victims. You can look up CHRI, the Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative. They've done extensive work in this field, and you can check out their reports and their findings on their website. Everything's very it's available there. If you also want detailed information on the laws relating to arrest, bail, and FIR, please visit our website, nyaya.org. We have detailed explainers on each of these procedural areas of law. Thank you for joining us today. We hope this information that we provided today proves to be helpful to you in some way. If you have any questions regarding police procedures or custodial violence, please leave a comment under this video, or you can alternatively go to our website and click on the Ask Nyaya tab and leave your question there. We'll get back to you soon. So until next time, I suppose, stay safe and good night.